The release of Dexter Resurrection is right around the corner, so you know what that means. We're here to open up the case files and give you a comprehensive forensic analysis of everyone's favorite vigilante serial killer. Mind the yellow tape, please. When we first meet Dexter, he's a relatively happy serial killer who only remembers bits and pieces of his early childhood. All he knows for sure is that he was adopted by a cop named Harry Morgan when he was around 3 years old, and that he's always been a bit, different. The story of his non-traditional childhood goes like this. Not long after adopting Dexter, Harry discovers that he has murderous tendencies, what Dexter eventually comes to call the dark passenger. While this would surely elicit some, let's say, rational responses from most people, like seeking out some serious therapy, Harry instead takes it upon himself to help his adopted son cope with these urges. How? He develops a code for Dexter to live by, one that ultimately allows Dexter to murder people, but only those who deserve it in some way. You know, like other murderers who aren't lucky enough to have dads who accept them for who they are and teach them how to properly abduct their victims. Bunch of posers.
Nice ambush. That was the perfect point of attack.
I can't believe I finally got you.
Not only that, he also teaches him how to prepare a kill room and how to properly dispose of a body after he's done with his bloody business. In other words, he's homeschooled by a guy who knows exactly what cops look for when investigating crime scenes, and ultimately earns a bachelor's in the art of murder. That's not the only education he gets, though. He goes on to study medicine before taking a job as a blood splatter analyst for the Miami Metro Police Department. In some ways, this is the perfect cover for Dexter. Not only does he get to be around all the blood and gore he wants, but he gets to go beyond what his dad taught him and stay up to date on all the new ways that police and forensic analysts like him catch violent criminals. He also gets to chum it up with his sister Deb, a cop, and Harry's real daughter, Detective Angel Batista, and lead forensic analyst Vince Masuka. Hey, even the biggest sociopaths need some solid work buds. In other ways, though, he's a little too close to the action. Case in point, Sergeant Dokes, an ex-military dude turned homicide detective who knows something is off with Dexter.
You give me the creeps, you know that, Dexter?
Yeah, I know. Sorry about that.
As a result, Dexter is forced to enhance his normal guy routine by getting a girlfriend. He ultimately chooses Rita, a single mother of two who has severe intimacy issues because of her abusive ex-husband, Paul. This is ideal for Dexter since, he's not really the touchy-feely type. However, he underestimates his boyfriend's skills and eventually ends up wooing her anyway.
I don't know what I've been so afraid of. You're the perfect boyfriend.
The relationship gets even more complicated when Paul is released on parole and attempts to re-enter Rita's life. This forces Dexter to deal with it in a way that only someone like him could or would. He frames him by knocking him out, abducting him, and then injecting him with heroin, which causes him to fail his next drug test and thus violate the terms of his parole. Bye, Paul. Back to prison. All of that is just small potatoes compared to the big problem in Season 1, though, which is the ice truck killer. Known for leaving behind mutilated bodies that are completely drained of blood, this serial killer seems to somehow know Dexter in a very personal way, which he or she hints at by leaving him little gifts, in addition to other taunting clues left behind for the Miami PD. The first one shows up in Dexter's apartment, a cross-section doll replica of a victim that's discovered in an empty pool. Then comes a still-living victim who's strapped to a table and ready to be iced in classic Dexter fashion. Things get truly real, though, when the killer leaves behind an especially bloody crime scene that causes a repressed memory to suddenly resurface. Turns out he was with his mother, Laura Moser, when she was brutally killed by a group of drug dealers. He sat in a pool of her blood for who knows how long before Harry showed up to rescue him and eventually adopt him. So what does all of this mean? How did the ice truck killer know how to unlock this traumatic memory? Long story short, the villain ends up being Rudy, who is Deb's boyfriend throughout Season 1. Rudy isn't his real name, though. He's actually Brian Moser, Dexter's equally murderous biological brother who, unbeknownst to him, was right there next to him when their mother was killed. Turns out, the whole ice truck killer thing is just an intricate ploy to reconnect with Dexter in hopes of broing out to the extreme, serial killer style. Their inaugural debut as a murderous duo, killing Deb together, of course. Dexter does give it some consideration, but ultimately decides to save his sister and put Brian out of his misery.
Done more to deserve my knife than anyone.
Season 2 begins with a fallout from Dexter's actions in Season 1. First off, some divers stumble upon his stash of bodies in the ocean, which leads to an investigation and him being dubbed the Bay Harbor Butcher. It's not just the Miami PD that's looking into the murders, the feds are called in as well, with Special Agent Frank Lundy leading the hunt. He's known for tracking down serial killers, so yeah, that puts Dexter a bit on edge. And if all that isn't bad enough, Doak starts tailing Dexter pretty much every night. Tough break, dude. Then there's the whole Paul thing. After Rita's ex is killed in a prison fight, she finds a way to prove that Dexter was involved in the shenanigans that got him put back behind bars. But she doesn't quite have it right. She thinks he has addiction problems, which is sorta true, all things considered, and forces him to attend Narcotics Anonymous, which Dexter hates. This is where he meets Lila, a quirky English woman who he connects with in a way that he's never really been able to with Rita.
Like 1,000 hiding voices,
whispering, "This is who you are."
They eventually hook up, and when Rita finds out, she breaks up with Dexter. Turns out, though, Lila is kinda bonkers. Not only does she set her own apartment on fire to trick Dexter into staying with her after he has doubts, she breaks into Rita's house to see if he's there one night, which causes him to end things with her and get back with Rita. Meanwhile, Lundy is hot on his trail, not to mention hot on his sister. So Dexter is forced to sabotage the investigation by unplugging the refrigerated tent where they're keeping the bodies of all his victims. This works out, but there's still the whole Dokes problem. This dude is persistent, so much so that he breaks into Dexter's apartment and finds his blood sample trophies. Now knowing without a doubt that Dexter is the Bay Harbor butcher, he follows him out to a cabin in the Everglades. Thankfully, Dexter is able to best him and lock him in a cage in the cabin.
Sorry it had to go down like this, Sergeant, but there really was no other way.
Meanwhile, Lila isn't done with Dexter yet. Having stolen his GPS, she heads to his last known location and comes upon Dokes. Realizing that Dexter is the Bay Harbor butcher and that she still loves him anyway, she decides to help him by blowing up the cabin and killing Dokes. Being that Lundy and the Miami PD find Dexter's blood samples in Dokes' car, they surmise that he was the Bay Harbor butcher and blew himself up to avoid being brought to justice. Problem solved? Mostly, although his old friend, Lieutenant Maria LaGuerta, doesn't buy it, even though it seems pretty cut and dry from the Miami PD's perspective. After all of this, Lila is still an issue. Realizing that Dexter has plans to kill her, she kidnaps Rita's kids, Astor and Cody. When Dexter shows up to her apartment to save them, she traps them all inside and sets the place on fire. But come on, you think Dexter can't handle sticky situations? Once he saves them, he tracks Lila to Paris and puts an end to her craziness for good. Season 3 begins with 2 life-altering events for Dexter. 1. Rita is pregnant. 2. He ends up killing the brother of prominent district attorney Miguel Prado during an attempted abduction of a murderous drug dealer named Freebo. Oops. It's fine though. When Miguel ends up catching Dexter in the act of killing Freebo later on, he's actually kinda psyched about it since he was there to kill the guy himself.
I'm gonna tell you something. I wasn't sure that I could do this, but you did.
Subsequently, he helps him cover up the crime and a full-on bromance ensues, with Miguel seeking Dexter on numerous baddies who he'd rather just kill instead of building successful cases against. It gets so close, in fact, that Dexter ends up asking Miguel to be his best man at his wedding. Meanwhile, Deb and her new partner, a mildly dirty cop named Joey Quinn, start investigating the newest serial killer in town, the Skinner. He proves to be pretty crafty and even manages to capture Deb's boyfriend, Anton, at one point. Dexter's bromance with Miguel takes a turn when the DA asks to participate in a murder himself, which Dexter allows. Bad idea. Why? Miguel soon takes it upon himself to just kill a defense attorney he doesn't like. Dexter doesn't approve, which causes a falling out between the two of them and ultimately results in Miguel ending up in one of Dexter's kill rooms. That's what you get for trying to have real friends, bud. Sorry about it. That's not the end of Dexter's problems, though. Don't forget about the Skinner. Dexter himself ends up on the kill table this time around, but only for a tiny bit. He gets the better of him and makes it look like he ended his own life right as the cops arrive. He also manages to make it look like Miguel was one of the Skinner's victims. Season 3 ends on a high note, with Dexter marrying Rita and becoming a full-fledged family man.
All my previous attempts at human connection have ended in, well, death. And now I have a partner for life.
Season 4 begins with Dexter becoming a father to his new son, Harrison. He's obviously happy, but the whole family thing is really starting to cut into his me time. Not only that, things are getting pretty hectic at work, too, since yet another new serial killer has emerged, Trinity Killer. As explained by Special Agent Frank Lundy, who has returned to lend his serial killer hunting services to the Miami PD once more, the Trinity Killer likes to kill in threes. First, he murders a young woman in a bathtub. Second, he forces a mother to jump off a ledge to her death. Third, he bludgeons a father to death. It's eventually revealed that this kill cycle mimics the way his own family died when he was a kid. Talk about some serious trauma. Meanwhile, despite the looming threat of the Trinity Killer, love is in the air at the old Miami PD. Quinn gets involved with the reporter. Batista and LaGuerta are set to get married, and Deb rekindles her relationship with Lundy. Sadly, though, the two of them are shot by an unknown assailant. Deb lives, but Lundy dies. Things get interesting when Dexter sets out to find the Trinity Killer on his own. He's shocked to find out that the serial killer, whose name is Arthur Mitchell, is a seemingly happy family man. Being that he's been having trouble on this front as of late, he decides to create an alias, Kyle Butler, and get close to Arthur so that he can learn how he manages to live such a successful double life. Turns out, though, his home life isn't as great as it seems. He's actually an abusive monster. Shocker. He's also pretty crafty. Without much trouble, he's able to figure out who Dexter really is and show up at the police department to troll him. Yikes.
Hello, Dexter Morgan.
It also turns out that the reporter Quinn is seen is actually Arthur's secret daughter, and she's the one who shot Lundy and Deb in an attempt to seek his approval. Unfortunately for her, Arthur isn't impressed, so she ends her own life. Since Dexter's been found out, he sends Rita and Harrison away to the Key so he can deal with Arthur. He does this, but it's too late. Season 4 ends with Dexter coming home to find Rita dead in the bathtub and Harrison crying in a pool of blood, a mirror image of what happened to him when he was a child. Alright, on to Season 5, the last decent season before the inevitable downslide. If we only knew at the time that Season 4 was the true high point. After finding out that their mom died, Astor and Cody go off to live with their grandparents. Dexter, on the other hand, gets back to his first love, murder, and goes after a serial killer named Boyd Fowler who preys on young women and puts their dead bodies in barrels. During his usual routine of slice and dice, he discovers a woman named Lumen being held captive in Fowler's attic. Since she's a witness to his crime, he has to convince her that he's a good serial killer. He succeeds and finds out that Fowler was only one of numerous men behind her abuse. When she asks if he's down to help her track them down and ice them all, he's definitely into it. As such, they start to find these guys and take them out together. The leader of the group is a motivational speaker named Jordan Chase, and they save him for last. And perhaps unsurprisingly, they eventually fall in love with each other while they go about their business. All the while, Quinn starts to look into Kyle Butler, the alias Dexter used to get close to Arthur Mitchell and the only other lead in the Trinity Killer case. When he begins to suspect that Butler is actually Dexter, he hires an ex-cop, Stan Liddy, to look into him. However, when he and Deb start hooking up and become an item, he doesn't feel comfortable pursuing the lead anymore, so he tells Liddy to back off. Liddy's hoping this case will help him revive his failed career though, so he keeps poking around and ultimately gets killed by Dexter. When Quinn shows up to meet with him, totally unaware that Liddy's body is in the van, a drop of blood falls on his shoe and implicates him in the murder. But thanks to Deb asking Dexter to flub the blood analysis, he's let off the hook. As a result, he's grateful and decides to leave Dex alone for good. When Jordan Chase gets wise to Dexter and Lumen's shenanigans, he kidnaps her.
I find this profoundly distasteful. Never had to do anything before. Now I have no choice. I can't leave any witnesses.
Though Dexter initially botches his rescue attempt, he finds a way to get the upper hand, and the two of them put an end to their saga of joint vigilante justice. But as they're tidying up, Deb arrives. After all, she is a pretty good detective, and piece together the fact that one of the kidnapped girls is still alive and hunting down her captors with an accomplice. While the only thing that separates her from the truth about her brother is an opaque plastic sheet, she ends up walking away, since she believes the victims of Dexter and Lumen's killing spree had it coming. Season 5 ends with Lumen bailing on Dexter after she's satisfied with her revenge. Womp womp. Season 6 starts off with some major religious vibes. Not only is Dexter thinking of placing Harrison in a Catholic preschool, but a new serial killer duo shows up on the scene, Professor James Geller and his student Travis Marshall. Their whole deal revolves around killing people in ways that mirror various bits of imagery from the Book of Revelations, all so that they can bring about Armageddon. Dexter is able to hone in on Travis pretty quickly, and realizes that he's more or less just brainwashed.
You're responsible for hurting a lot of people, Travis. I'm sure you don't feel good about that.
So he turns him in hopes of finding Geller. As for the more soapy personal stuff, Bautista and LaGuerta split up after being married for not too long. It's fine, they're still friends. Deb and Quinn also break up, which results in Quinn going off the deep end. This, mixed with the stress brought on by being promoted at work and a shooting she's involved in, causes Deb to see a therapist. And at one of her sessions, her therapist suggests that she might be in love with Dexter. What? Sounds like this lady should be a screenwriter instead of a therapist. There's also a side plot that involves two different interns that work under Masuka. The first is a woman who stupidly puts the ice truck killer's prosthetic hand up for sale on eBay and gets herself fired. The second is her replacement, a video game designer named Lewis who gets his feelings hurt when Dexter craps on a serial killer game.
What do you think?
I think this is offensive.
We come to find out that Lewis is the one who ended up buying the prosthetic hand online, and he later sends it to Dexter as part of a revenge plot that carries into the next season. More on that later. The big twist of the season is that Professor Geller is actually dead. Yep, Travis has just been hallucinating his mentor the whole time. While he manages to almost kill Dexter in a biblical lake of fire, our favorite vigilante serial killer escapes, but not before Travis kidnaps Harrison with the intent to kill him on the day of an eclipse. Of course, Dexter doesn't let this happen and easily finds a way to get Travis on his kill table, which he sets up in the same church where Travis murdered his other victims. But just as he does the deed, Deb shows up to witness the whole thing. Neither of them know how to respond, and the season ends there. Major cliffhanger. Season 7 picks up right at this moment. Somehow, Dexter is able to convince her that it was self-defense? Sure, why not? After helping him burn the church down to conceal the evidence of his crime, Deb does some good old detective work and eventually uncovers the truth. Dexter is the Bay Harbor Butcher. How does she respond? She has Dexter move in with her so she can keep an eye on him and stop him from killing more people. This doesn't last too long, though. After a crazy serial killer who likes to dress up as a minotaur and murder young women in his homemade labyrinth gets off on a technicality, Dexter takes justice into his own hands, which Deb wholeheartedly approves of. So from this point on, Deb is a little more accepting of his dark passenger.
How do you feel?
Another side plot in Season 7 revolves around the Ukrainian mob. Yeah, the downslide is very real by this point, just in case the whole Deb being in love with Dexter thing wasn't enough to tip you off. Basically, what happens is a Ukrainian mobster named Viktor Baskov kills a detective who discovers a dead prostitute in the trunk of his car, which of course sets off an investigation. Dexter puts it all together before the Miami PD, though, and kills the guy himself. The problem is that Viktor was the boyfriend of Kashka Brotherhood boss Isaac Serko, so this dude ends up gunning for Dexter throughout the season. Eventually, Serko ends up drawing too much attention to the Brotherhood and they conspire to kill him, which forces him to ask Dexter for help. It's all for naught in the end. He gets shot anyway, and Dexter buries him at sea with Viktor. Also tangled up in this side plot is the whole Lewis thing. Remember the intern who bought the prosthetic hand and has a revenge plot against Dexter? Yeah, he tries to sabotage him by canceling his credit cards and even tries to sink his boat at one point. This is when he serendipitously crosses paths with Isaac and gets iced out of nowhere. Cool. Bye, Lewis. Anyway, one of the more important things to happen in Season 7 is the arrival of Hannah McKay. She's a serial killer who likes to poison people, so obviously she's perfect prey for Dexter. But she's also sort of his type, which she discovers when she doesn't freak out after being taped to one of his kill tables. Yeah, they hook up and basically fall in love. How can he not be stoked to find someone who finally accepts him for who he is?
Not only can't I kill her, I can't seem to stay away from her. Even when I'm not with Hannah, she's there. In my head.
Deb isn't as stoked as he is, though, and attempts to bust her. As a result, Hannah poisons her and she almost dies in a car crash. Once Dexter proves this, he gives her up and she's arrested. But she's more slippery than anyone could have guessed. She poisons herself and finds a way to escape custody. Gee, I wonder if she'll show up again at some point. The most important thing to happen in Season 7 concerns LaGuerta. She's always been convinced that Dokes wasn't the Bay Harbor Butcher, so when she finds a blood slide that Dexter accidentally left behind at the church after he killed Travis, she knows she's onto something. Eventually, she proves it's him and has him arrested. But come on, do you think Dexter's gonna let this happen? Nah, he's one step ahead of her and tricks everyone into thinking that LaGuerta planted the evidence, so he gets to walk. LaGuerta doesn't give up, though. When she presents Deb with a video of her getting gas right next to the church before it mysteriously went up in flames, both Deb and Dexter realize that the jig is most definitely up, or Dexter could just kill her, even though she doesn't fit his usual criteria. Just as he's about to carry through with it, Deb shows up to save her boss, but it's not so easy once she has them both in her crosshairs.
You have to end this. Shoot him. Stop!
What's a girl to do? Ultimately, Deb chooses to shoot LaGuerta and save her brother. Damn. Season 8 starts off with Deb being so distraught that she quits the force, joins a private investigation firm, and goes on a bender for a while. Fair response, all things considered. Meanwhile, the Miami PD starts to investigate the new serial killer, the brain surgeon. Brought in to help catch him is Dr. Evelyn Vogel, an expert on psychopaths. We find out she has a deep connection to Dexter when she presents him with some of his childhood drawings. Turns out, she's the one who helped Harry develop Dexter's code when he was a kid, so in a way, she made him who he is. Why did she tell him this? The brain surgeon is actually one of her old patients, and she wants Dexter to find him and kill him before he kills her. He obliges and does so by ramming a curtain rod through a mattress and impaling him? Yeah, it's definitely one of the dumbest kills in the history of television. Vogel also takes it upon herself to help Deb and Dexter reconnect and hash things out. All the while, Hannah makes a surprise reappearance. She's married to a possessive rich dude now, but it's fine. She just kills him and gets back together with Dexter. They decide to run away to Argentina with Harrison, and Deb is so numb to everything by this point that she just accepts it. Turns out, though, the brain surgeon saga is far from over. The guy Dexter killed was actually just a decoy, and the real brain surgeon is Vogel's estranged son who murdered his own brother when he was a kid. He hates his mother for sending him off to an institution, and is jealous of Dexter, so he decides to kill her right in front of him. After he captures him, Dexter takes the high road and calls Deb so she can arrest him. How's that for personal growth?
Gilly's hug me.
However, a cop who thinks Deb is harboring Hannah follows her there and unwittingly frees the serial killer, who then proceeds to shoot Deb and escapes. Deb's fine, but Dexter can't bring himself to leave without first ensuring that the brain surgeon is dead, so Hannah and Harrison head off to Argentina without him. The brain surgeon shows up at the hospital to kill Deb, but it's okay, the cops were waiting for him and he's arrested. What's not okay, though, is that there were complications during Deb's surgery and she's brain dead now. Dexter wants revenge, but the brain surgeon is in police custody. His solution? Provoking him into attacking him and then killing him with a pen in quote-unquote self-defense. Unfortunately, this isn't enough to make Dexter feel better, so he unplugs Deb from life support, steals her body, and gives her a burial at sea. Then, after deciding that Hannah and Harrison will be better off without him, he drives his boat into the eye of a hurricane.
I have to protect them from me.
And just when we think that's the end, we see that he survived after all and is living as a logger somewhere up north. Yep, pretty much everyone hated this. It's notoriously regarded as one of the worst series finales of all time. So what do you do when everyone hates the ending of a show? You bring it back for a reboot and try again, duh. In Dexter New Blood, we see that Dexter has made a new life for himself in Iron Lake, New York, and goes by the alias Jim Lindsay. He lives in a rad cabin, works at a sporting goods store, and dates a cop named Angela? Talk about stepping up your cover game. Except it isn't really a cover this time, since he actually stopped killing people. Well, for a while anyway. After a moronic rich dude's son, Matt Caldwell, shoots a majestic white buck near Dexter's land, Dexter can't help himself and ices the guy. The buck is basically a symbol of Dexter's hard-earned innocence, so he kinda has to.
You have no idea what you're doing!
Like you said, life is short, dude.
This, of course, causes an investigation that Dexter has to stay one step ahead of, just like in the good old days. To make matters even more complicated, Harrison tracks his old man down and eventually moves in to reconnect with him. Not only that, he unsurprisingly turns out to have a dark passenger of his own. We see this play out when Harrison stabs a would-be school shooter and attempts to play it off like he was acting in self-defense. Everyone buys it at first, except for Dexter, of course. Turns out he committed the crime with a straight razor, the same weapon the Trinity Killer used to kill his mother. Another major aspect of New Blood involves Matt Caldwell's dad, Kurt, who is actually a serial killer himself. He owns a truck stop and preys on runaway girls. When he eventually finds out that Dexter is the one behind his son's death, he decides to kill Harrison as payback. But Dexter saves him just in time and decides to include him in the family tradition. As such, they bond over their dark passengers, and it seems like they're really going to be alright. But no. Angela ends up discovering the truth about her boyfriend, thanks in part to a random run-in with Bautista while she's following a lead in New York City, and arrests him. However, he escapes by killing a cop who is also the school wrestling coach and Harrison's friend.
She's a good cop, and so are you. But this is inevitable.
So when Harrison finds out about this as they're preparing to go on the run, he changes his mind about his dad and holds him at gunpoint. Knowing that he'll never truly be able to change his ways or tolerate to life in prison, Dexter asks Harrison to just shoot him. Harrison does this and bails, with a little extra help from Angela. New Blood ends with Dexter bleeding out in the snow, apparently dead. After such a poetic ending, what more could people want? A prequel, of course. Seriously though, did anyone besides us even watch Dexter Original Sin? Isn't there already a plethora of flashbacks in the OG show that successfully flesh out his backstory? Weren't those scenes with Michael C. Hall wearing the most unconvincing wig of all time enough? Apparently not. But hey, it's fun to watch if you love Dexter. We get to see his early days as a forensic analyst, his first kills, an extensive depiction of Harry's relationship with Dexter's mother, some of Brian Moser's story, and even Dexter's thwarting of a cop-turned child killer. Nice stash, Patrick Dempsey. Not a whole lot really impacts the overarching story in the end, but it's satisfying enough to see Dexter come into his own and become the vigilante serial killer we've all come to know and love over the years. And now, here we are in 2025, poised to watch as Dexter, miraculously still alive after being shot in the chest with a hunting rifle, travels to New York City to find Harrison, who looks to be following in his father's footsteps, to some degree anyway. Besides that, the plot of Resurrection also looks to involve Peter Dinklage as a dude who collects serial killers? Or something. We'll see.
You really like serial killers.
I pride myself on finding the best of the best in every field.
Let's show and tell, baby!
Uma Thurman is part of it too, and Bautista's back. Man, safe to say we're ready to grab some popcorn and fully lean into this improbable continuation that looks like it might actually be a pretty good time. What about you? Let us know in the comments, and we'll see you at the big premiere on July 11th, 2025.